welcome to everyone. We are delighted to have you all as part of the 5th edition of the Radio Festival. Despite the pandemic dampening our spirits, we managed to pull off an online version of the festival, but nothing can beat the charm of the good old physical gathering. So here we are with all of you as part of the 5th edition of the Radio Festival.
इस जश्न का आगाज़ करने के लिए हम मंच पे उन लोगों को आमंत्रित करना चाहेंगे जिन्होंने हमें रेडियो के फील्ड में नई ऊंचाइयों को छूने की प्रेरणा दी है और जोश दिया है.
We would now like to invite our esteemed guests to join us on the stage. Mr. Hezekiel Damini, Advisor for Communications and Information for South Asia, UNESCO. Mr. Mayank Kumar Agrawal is on his way and will be joining us shortly. Mr. Siddharth Shresht, Chief, Social and Behavior Change, UNICEF. Mr. Kiri Atri, External Relations Officer, UNHCR. Ms. Neeja Sekhar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And Ms. Archana Kapoor, Founder, the Radio Festival.
You know, every time I stand on the stage on the Radio Festival Day, I really feel so nervous. At the same time, I feel so proud. And I feel that we have really filled in this void, which was there in India, a festival to celebrate audio, a festival to celebrate radio. So a big hand to all of you for joining us and making this, in the last 5 years, an event to be very proud of. This wouldn't have been possible without the participation of so many radio stations, whether it's the public radio, the private radio, or the community radio. So I welcome all of you, each one of you on the dais, and each one of you in this hall. We are, as you know, celebrating our 5th edition of the Radio Festival, which is a matter of deep pride because we braved the 2 years of the pandemic, but the Radio Festival continued. We were, I wouldn't call fortunate, but we were just lucky that we celebrated in 2020 a very, very big event, thanks to UNESCO, Ministry of INB and other partners, where we had about 2,000 people attending that event at IGNCA. In 2021, we just beat the second wave by doing it in February, and then we know what happened after March. This year, because of Omicron, we did an online festival. We are very grateful to Prasar Bharati and Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which is actually one and the same. I should have said it in reverse. But they really, have been guiding us, pushing us, encouraging us, and giving us the courage to go on year after year. We normally do it on 13th of February, which is World Radio Day. But as I just mentioned, Omicron pushed us to this day, which we are again delighted because it's also the week of the National Broadcasting Day. So we just wanted to match it to some event. We all love radio. We love radio for various reasons. We love radio because it is very simple, because anybody can operate a radio. We love radio because it is accessible. We love radio because it is a symbol of democracy. It is something which democratizes information. And why we love radio is because it gives us predictable choices. I welcome Mr. Mayank Agrawal, CEO Prasar Bharati, who has made time for this event despite the fact that we know so much is happening outside. The president is being sworn in. A lot of other things are happening outside this hall. But sir, thank you so much for making it to this event and giving us the strength to carry on year after year. So I was just saying why we love radio. We love radio because it is very simple. It's simple to access. It's simple to operate. It gives us predictable choices. We are not confused. We can't, what they are giving us, we listen and we can also call in. It's very simple. And most of all, because it is the superpower of providing listeners with good company and very good memories. So we also believe in radio because it is still the most inexpensive forum to provide information and education. It is a source of entertainment for millions of people who have limited or no access to internet, to smartphones, to computers, and television. Oft I'm on platforms where I'm defending radio like crazy. I have answered so many sponsors, so many donors, so many partners. Why do you talk about radio? The world has moved on. And I keep telling them, go and visit any community radio and ask them why they are still doing radio. They will be the right ones to give you an answer to why they still believe in the medium of radio. For me, radios represent a crucial input in the development process, in the social struggles, in creating awareness, in using information as a commodity that we all require, that we all thrive on, whether it is about an individual, a place, a community, a country, or the world at large. This was more evident, as I just mentioned, when the pandemic was on and community radios and other radios, why should I only talk about community radios? They all struggled so hard. Last year, we heard the stories of very, very popular RJs and how they were getting into almirahs to make their programs because they didn't have the advantage of soundproof and they were on these commercial channels. So they shared their stories and struggles of living at home, not knowing how to cook. The car used to come take them. Everything was prepared and here they were doing everything themselves. And those of you who were here with us last year in this very hall have heard those stories. As you all know, the Radio Festival is the first of its kind event in India. And it has breached the silos of public, private, and community radios. It has brought together the three tiers on one platform. We are extremely grateful to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Please pardon me if I keep repeating this, but I am indeed extremely grateful to MIB and Prasar Bharati and all the private channels that have lent support to us every year. We are extremely grateful to all and every community radio that is here or has not been able to be physically present here, who travel to Delhi from all over the country. We have people from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Mumbai to Tripura, and the world at the country as a whole. At its 5th edition, it gives me great pride to also introduce the Active Citizenship Festival, which we are launching on this 5th edition of the TRF. Active Citizenship Festival is one of the most important steps towards building healthy societies, and means that people get involved in their local communities and democracy at every level. It helps citizens understand that the democratic life involves the adoption of a series of everyday actions that can range from kindness to asking questions to working together, and these can only be strengthened by practice. Through gameplays and discussions, the festival aims to strengthen the civic muscle and find together pathways to participation. This is the strength of community radios too. That is why the TACF and TRF work very well together. The installation of a sustainable city outside, because IIC has lots of restrictions that don't allow you to do much, so everything is on just panels and flex, but it gives you an idea of what a city should be. Please go upstairs also. Some panels are upstairs and they will walk you through the process from a jail to a school, from the court to industries, to waste places, to areas of protest. The sustainable city represents all that. I'm just saying we are here and the TACF is happening upstairs, so please do visit. Last year, it gives me a lot of pride once again that we announced the TRF UNESCO SDG Fellowship, and we are very happy to welcome our 11 fellows, 5 from last year and 6 from this year's cohort to this festival. Thank you, Hezekiel, for that support. Thank you, UNESCO. This year, with the support of UNICEF, we have also announced an award for the most innovative ideas on community engagement on nutrition, one of the flagship programs of the Government of India. Thank you, Siddharth, for this. We at SMART and the Radio Festival are extremely grateful to Sir Mr. Mayank Agarwal, CEO Prasar Bharati, for supporting this event not only by your presence, but also for being available whenever we need you. To the Additional Secretary, Ms. Neeja Shekhar, for being with us and backing us all the time. Whenever I request an appointment, I get it within a few minutes. Thank you, ma'am, for your time and for your guidance. I would also like to express my gratitude to Mr. Sunil, ADG Prasar Bharati here, for being there, for being the bridge between Prasar Bharati and the Radio Festival, and for your kindness and your vision and giving us direction time and again. Mr. Sunil, I would really like to thank you. I would like to thank UNESCO for partnering with us and giving us the freedom to plan and implement a festival with the way we all conceive it together. I'm so delighted that after 4 years, UNICEF is again on the dais with us. You were with us on in the first edition of 2018, and Siddharth is here in this 5th edition. So thank you so much for being here. I'm very happy that UNHCR is an addition to this festival. Thank you, Kiri, for engaging community radios to spread the message of peaceful coexistence and understanding the real meaning of leaving no one behind. Thank you so much for that. I'm also grateful to ONGC. That was my first place of work. I joined as administrative officer in 1984 and quit that in 2 years because I thought I should do something else in life. But they have been one of the strongest supporters of everything that I do. And they are not here, but I would like to thank them for supporting the travel and accommodation of 40 community radios to this festival. I thank each and every private radio station here who always nominate their star RJs for this event, and it's been a huge learning from all of them. I want to thank Avion V, which for the first time is our partner for social media. I hope Avion V is here and listening. It's the biggest, largest PR company in the country, and I hope they help us take this festival to new heights. We hope that this support only grows bigger, stronger, larger, huger, whatever adjectives you can add in the coming editions. With the support of all our partners, I hope that one day we will turn it into a traveling event. I want to thank FNF, Friedrich Naumann Stiftung, particularly for entirely funding the TACF. The Active Citizenship Festival is being implemented and is being carried on because of Friedrich Naumann Stiftung. Frank, I request you to take a bow. We have Frank here, and it is the Friedrich Naumann Stiftung, FNF for Freedom. So a lot of things that we do is also in maintaining democracy of what we do and maintaining independence in what we do. So thank you so much once again, each one, for coming here and for standing by this movement, this sector, the radio. Thank you so much.
I would now like to request Mr. Hezekiel Damini, Advisor for Communications and Information for South Asia UNESCO, to give the opening address.
Ms. Seka, Additional Secretary, Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Mr. Agraval, CEO, Prasabharti, senior government officials here present, colleagues, distinguished guests, friends in radio. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to join you today on this auspicious occasion. Let me start by thanking Ms. Archana Kapoor and her team at SMART for her energy and drive, because this event needs real energy and drive, and she has it, for bringing us together here and to celebrate the festival, and in particular the radio fair, under the theme SDGs on the air. This event is taking place with the continuous general support and collaboration of our key partners represented on the podium, but others in the House. And these are the Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Prasabharti, UNICEF, UNHCR, and others, as mentioned by Archana, in the House. And we thank you all for this partnership. Radio is, by definition, a participatory medium and can only be supported through multi-stakeholder partnerships. Communicating the Sustainable Development Goals remains an instrumental catalyst for the successful implementation of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and the achievement of the goals and targets. To reinforce this effort, radio, especially community radio, needs to continue playing a leading role. As international and national actors find ways to fast-track the achievement of the SDGs, it will also be crucial to inform and involve the public, who are the ultimate beneficiaries on the ground. All players in radio broadcasting has been very effective in bringing development information to the people, especially in disadvantaged and aspiring areas. Community radio has particularly played a key role in raising awareness and strengthening community engagement in local level government schemes, programs, and development initiatives over the years. During COVID, we can't forget how radio provided reliable information that saved lives. When the infodemic emerged as a major threat to public health efforts, radio played a front-line role in countering misinformation and fake news. This radio fair provides an opportunity to share experiences and encourage one another to do more. Some SDGs have now become global emergencies, and radio needs to convey this message clearly to our communities on the ground and call for what has now become a very urgent need for everyone to engage. To accomplish this, radio needs support further capacities in information research, as well as content production and dissemination on the SDGs. This support may include improving their networks of information sources on specific SDGs and developing skills on how to transform SDG content into radio programs. UNESCO has also partnered, as we've heard earlier on, with SMART in implementing the SDG Fellowship to build the capacity and skills of young people to report on SDGs. We will hear, of course, as Ashna said, we'll hear further about this fellowship later on. UNESCO welcomes the initiative of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting to set up a network of lead community radios in the country. It is a necessary and natural evolution of the fast maturing community radio landscape in the country. We look forward to interacting with the lead stations in the coming days and to learning more about their expected role in strengthening community radio development in the country. UNESCO remains ready to collaborate with the ministry, the public service broadcaster, and all friends in community radio development by contributing its technical expertise and sharing global good practices in the area. Thank you very much.
I would now like to request Mr. Mayank Kumar Agrawal, CEO Prasar Bharati, to give the keynote address.
Ms. Neerja Shekhar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Mr. Kiri Atri, External Relations Officer, UNHCR. Mr. Siddharth Shrestha, Chief Social and Behavior Change, UNICEF. Mr. Hezekiel Lamni, Advisor for Communication and Information for South Asia. And Ms. Archana Kapoor, full of energy, founder of the Radio Festival. Good morning, everyone. So it gives me immense pleasure to be present amidst you. The August gathering, I will call, of radio broadcasters celebrating the Radio Festival. So what comes to your mind immediately when you talk about festival? For me, and I think for many of you, or all of you, festival is celebration of our fond association with radio. The celebration of its uniqueness, the celebration of the fun it is. Many of us, and because I go to my childhood, my younger days, my hostel days, we spent the time with radio next to our bed, tuning the round knob to set sometimes the weak and elusive frequencies. I don't know the younger generation, but it happened with me. And I was not privileged to be in metro cities like Delhi. So I come from a smaller place, so there was no radio station. So we will try to tune Delhi, which was some 200 kilometers. So in that during the day, you will not get the signal. In the night, the signal will be better. Am I right? Yes. So we will be setting the knob to tune to the elusive frequencies Quarter to 9 was Hindi news, 9 o'clock was English news, 9:15 was Hawa Mahal, Vivid Bharati. Remember? Yeah. And then late night Chaya Geet. So, not knowing when we would quietly slip the radio, sat inside our quilt in the wintry night, and not realizing when we go to sleep. And 11 o'clock, it will go off. I think 11 o'clock was the last news, and it will go off. And then suddenly in the midnight, around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, you will realize, oh, I went switched off. So those are the fond memories. And I found personally that I have been a student of science, mathematics, and physics. So I never found radio songs disturbing to me, never found. And I think that many engineers are also here who are working, so I might be right. So that was the beauty of radio. It was our companion living in our pocket, prettily sitting on our hostel table, home kitchen to home garden, and then it was suddenly threatened to go into oblivion by more glamorous TV. Radio gradually became the medium of poorer sections, but it refused to go into shadows. It bounced back, and rest you know. It adapted to new technologies, and today it is our favorite, particularly during travel. When we come to office in the morning hours, so it refreshes us. And is still popular in the hostel rooms of young students. Yeah? So many young people, they are very happy about it. And many of you might, I don't know, like community radio stations. So those are popular in the campuses. Where television cannot reach, radio reaches. It is the best tool for information during the calamities, cyclone, earthquake, cloudburst. And in fact, I was just reading about All India Radio, though I am CEO. So All India Radio played a very significant role during partition also, uniting the families at that time. And even the calamities, this Kedarnath cloudburst. Today, the radio expansion is taking place, whether it is within the domain of the public broadcaster, Prasar Bharati, or in the domain of private players. This expansion, why it is taking place? Because it has audience. And must be the radio jockeys, some present here. I am really thankful to this wonderful community of radio jockeys who have made it so scintillating, so absorbing. Their voices behind the radio, what they do? They trigger our imagination flying high, taking you around the world, then to your neighborhood suddenly, to your past, to your future. I really compliment today's youth for coming up with great innovations, even in radio anchoring. So radio today is not a dull medium, but a very exciting one. You sit in the car, your hand first goes where after you switch on? To the radio tuner. And radio jockeys come on air, refreshing you. I'm happy that the public broadcaster, Prasar Bharati, is also keeping pace with the times. AIR presenters are part of the new trend. All India Radio is now accessible to almost the entire population of the country, with about 500 broadcasting centers covering approximately 92% of the country's area and over 99% of the total population. It has a very strong presence in the country. AIR services are available on digital platforms. I think you must be knowing about News on Air app. The AIR services, they are also available on Free Dish. And we are trying to expand our reach more and more to the youth. UNESCO on World Radio Day 2015 advocated radio by youth for youth. Radio is a medium for the future, it has a duty to include young people, not just as listeners, but as active producers and creators of content. So I'm happy to share with you in this regard that recently, All India Radio, we started organizing programs for youth, focusing on them, AIR Next. What happens in this? I think the people are aware, they are quite well informed. What happens in this, that the college and school students, they are called to the AIR station to participate in a debate. Then the selected student gets opportunity to host a program on local AIR station. So it's becoming very popular. How to associate the people with your broadcast. And that is what our community radio stations are doing. So about 350 community radio stations we already have, and the number is increasing. And as my predecessor, Mr. Lamni said, that translating the SDG goals into radio program content, this is something very important. So radio is certainly, it is for information, it is for entertainment, and I would say that over and above, it has become an agent of social change for us. I am happy about the trust that All India Radio has in the hearts of Indians. Though you know, but I will like to mention at this platform that in the series of surveys by Reuters, All India Radio and Doordarshan News have stood at the top in terms of trustworthiness of their news across the entire electronic media platform. So, friends, I'm here, so participating in this radio festival. Very nice name you have given, festival. So let's enjoy, and I wish that this tool, now it is being driven by people, not from the top. So I will finally end with our motto of All India Radio, Bahujan Hitai, Bahujan Sukhai. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Mayank Agarwal, for the insights. I would now like to request Mr. Siddharth Shresht, Chief SBC, UNICEF, to give a special address to our audience.
Good morning, everybody. After Mayank ji's inspiring remarks, it's a tough act to follow. Good morning, Nirja Sekharji, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Mayank ji, who we know well, CEO of Prasar Bharati, Sunil ji, Additional ADG, Prasar Bharati, Hezekiel, my friend here from UNESCO, and Kiri from UNHCR. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, and all friends of radio, you guys are the most important audience today. It's great to be back celebrating the achievements of community radio once again with the Radio Festival. And UNICEF is pleased to collaborate with SMART and all the community radios across the states, which we have been supporting for a pretty long time. Why? Because we believe in the power of social and behavior change, which Mayank ji also mentioned, community radio as a tool for social change. Whether we call it community radio, rural radio, development radio, people like us in the development world strongly believe that in the business of social change, community radio is definitely one of the most effective mediums to reach rural and remote communities and the hardest to reach population. And as we all know, you all know all these things, but probably it's a repetition. But like what Archana said, I think it's important to reiterate that community radio does reflect and promote local identity, culture, and character by focusing on local content. Not only does community radio reach indigenous communities with relevant and important information that directly impacts the livelihood and well-being, but it has over the years shown great resilience to adopt new technologies. Because you know that, because of the radius and the constant need to evolve with people now listening to community radio also on mobile phones. It's not just the traditional one, which Mayankji was saying. I think the world has really changed, and community radio has managed to adopt and adapt to the evolving situation. I've had opportunities during my field missions to visit a number of stations across the states and was impressed by the work they are doing despite the challenges. Particularly or especially the drive or the power to drive community engagement and social capital, so important. The collective power of empowerment, be it through the community reporters, the listenership groups we call, and I think the biggest word here, not broadcasting, but narrowcasting, being a key element of driving the process of social change. That's why we equate community radio and social change to be entwined with each other. Apart from normal settings, they have proved to be extremely useful in providing critical information during the times of crisis. As you know, like some examples of the Hadad cyclone in the far-flung Koraput district in Odisha, or the major one, COVID-19, that took all of us by surprise in 2020. And during that time, close to 200 community radio stations broadcasted in local languages, indigenous dialects for over 16 hours a day with key COVID-19 information. That was especially important as it started reaching remote and dark areas across all states in India. And that's where we know there was a lot of information overload. Almost everybody with a mobile phone was a journalist. So what was the information they were supposed to believe? Was it washing your hands with soap, washing your hands with something else? What is the measurement of social distancing? 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet. And that's where media dark areas, community radios played an extremely important role. So as communities remain in isolation, community radio stepped up their role in being a trusted source of information in these communities. We as UNICEF were privileged to support the Community Radio Association as one of the primary communication partner for the national COVID response, reaching over 30 vulnerable communities. And here I also want to make a special mention and huge thanks to Prasar Bharati and Ministry of Information and Broadcasting for lending their hand both in television as well as radio. Because all the researchers, what Mayankji was saying, during that time we did, radio and television, particularly the public broadcasters, was coming as the number one trusted source of communication. So hats off to you guys. COVID is definitely not over. I'm not giving the message of COVID here, but we still request all radio stations to continue the awareness program in COVID appropriate behaviors and support also the vaccination process. It's not over, as we know, right? And you guys are there to actually continue the push on awareness, because people all of us tend to forget very easily. Coming back to the theme of today, SDGs on the air is an interesting one. Congratulations, Archana and the SMART team on already celebrating its 5th edition. That actually also reminds me of the SDGs toolkit that was developed a few years ago, specifically for community radios. It presents the SDGs in the local development context and in a very simplified manner. It provides radios as well as community radios on how they can develop programs across the different goals. So I encourage all community, not only community, all radio stations here today to use this toolkit to develop programs to engage people on the sustainable development goals. Taking one of the key SDG goals, we are currently working with SMART and other community radios to promote one of the key goals, nutrition literacy among its listeners. But while doing that, it is important to recognize the good work of community radio champions who were selected through a very competitive process. This, of course, has been a hallmark of the radio festival. I look forward to the award ceremony so we all get inspiration from these champions, from these fellows across the board. So we are all encouraged to do better and do more innovative programming in radio. I wish the festival the very best. Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shresht. I would now like to request Mr. Kiri Atri for a special address.
Good morning to all of you. And foremost, my greetings to my fellow panelists, the Honorable Madam Neerja Shekhar, the Additional Secretary for Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, CEO of Prasar Bharati, Mr. Mayank Agarwal, and my colleagues from UNICEF and UNESCO. A lot of you must be wondering what's a UNHCR, a refugee agency, is doing in a radio festival. And I often get this question. And the simple answer to that is, refugees are protected in the communities. Refugees are protected by the neighbors. Refugees are protected by the peaceful coexistence which exists between your host and your guest. And that's what brings us here. To utilize the power, as many of my fellow panelists have mentioned, that you, as radio broadcasters, have the power, have the position to use radios to promote information, to spread awareness, and have an opportunity to bring two people together. And that's why we are here. And foremost also, I would like to congratulate Ms. Archana Kapoor and her team for putting this wonderful event. My interaction with her in the morning was around that this is one of the first events I'm attending after the COVID pandemic. And perhaps thank you so much, Archana, for making me introduced to my own colleagues who I was seeing them on Teams. And perhaps we also found this to be very unique because we were always seeing everybody's team messages with the name tags. So thank you so much for giving me a name tag as well after a long time. So with that kind of a word, I would also bring to forth the topic which this radio festival has, which is SDG on air. Why this is important for you as radio broadcasters to understand is because there are 17 sustainable development goals, more than 200 indicators. It's not the job of one person to do it. When every one of you goes out in the communities, mobilizes 1.7 billion people to understand SDGs, and when everyone is going to work towards SDG, you will have that decade of action, which is decade 2030. And what is our interest in it? Of course, I would speak for UNHCR as well. Our interest is that you go out in the community and operationalize a very, very, very important principle, which is on which the SDGs are based, that is, leave no one behind. Look within your community who is not able to exercise their rights. Look within the community who is not doing well. That's what SDGs are. Making sure that everybody's rights are respected. Rights are not just freedom of expression, freedom of speech. It's also about whether you have enough food to eat, whether you have enough food to water to drink, whether you have jobs in your community, whether there is peaceful coexistence, whether communities are peacefully coexisting, whether your communities are well informed. That's what we want you to do here today. Understand what these SDGs are. Take them back to your community, mobilize them, and make an SDG a reality by 2030. And for us, go back and make them understand the situation of refugees. What is the specific situation of refugee I want you to take back home? That they are the victims of their own circumstances. You can be a refugee, I can be a refugee, not by a choice we make, but by the circumstances. And they're not here forever. They are here only for a very temporary period of time. Until the time they are there, implement the very principle of the Indian civilization and democracy, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. Operationalize that principle. And you don't need to look much more beyond than your own home country. The first tune which Prasar Bharati or the radio had was actually the very classic tune which you hear was made by a Polish refugee. Your own community is so inclusive that you gave an opportunity to a refugee to make a musical tune for you. So derive a lot of inspirations from India. It's a civilization which is the oldest, one of the oldest in the world, and has shown the world how you can peacefully coexist. You are coming from north, south, east, west, speaking different languages, eating different food. All of you are dressed differently. It itself is a good moment to acknowledge that you don't have to look beyond, but within yourself to see how you can actually accommodate people. How can you treat them with kindness? How can you treat them with respect? So look into your communities, take back the information which you are going to learn over here from today and tomorrow. You will have an opportunity to listen to many, many great visionaries, listeners. Soak in that information and like a sponge, go back and squeeze it out on your communities so that they absorb all that information. And when we say we are partnering and we are supporting this event, it is not just by the way we appear in the logo. We remain available to answer any of your questions you may have about refugees. You may have about your own hospitality, which your country has shown to refugees for many, many decades. Many of your great businessmen were refugees. Parsis were refugees. Sindhis were refugees. Sir spoke about the partition. Many of our lives were impacted by the partition and we became refugees in our own countries. So I would say derive a lot of inspirations. You have enough thing to learn from this country. Spread it in your community and then take it global. So with that word, I would say that an informed community is a sign of a strong community radio. Use that power wisely and enjoy these 2 days, learn a lot, and spread a lot of good information and awareness. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ratri. I would now like to request Ms. Neeja Sekhar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, to give the inaugural address.
Good morning to all of you, and good morning to my dear friends and colleagues on the dais. They're beautiful lines of Gulzar Sahab. नाम गुम जाएगा, चेहरा ये बदल जाएगा, मेरी आवाज़ ही पहचान है, कर याद रहे. With these lines, I also pay my tributes to Lata Mangeshkar ji and Bhupinder ji, who are no longer with us, but their voice will always be with us. Their voice recorded in the studios of All India Radio and in various other studios. This is such a beauty that in a temporary life, broadcasting and radio can make a voice, a person, permanent. It's a way of making people live with us. We've heard music of stalwarts all over the world. They may no longer be with us in the world anymore, but their songs, their music, the solace that their voice gives us continues to be with us. I congratulate you all on the Broadcasting Day, the National Broadcasting Day, 23rd July, when All India Radio was launched. This is an occasion that SMART and its partners are celebrating today. And the 5th Radio Festival is also being celebrated. We had a smaller version a few months back in February. I was here. And I've also attended the previous versions of the Radio Festival in the last couple of years. It's been a pleasure to be with all of you, with the broadcasters, the private broadcasters, the community broadcasters, and the public broadcaster. We have our whole community here. After All India Radio was launched in 1927, it has come a big way as a public broadcaster. We have more than 430 radio stations. We have the domestic services, we have the external services, we have the online services, as also the direct-to-home services. That is, radio service on your direct-to-home television set. That is the free dish. All India Radio today broadcasts in 23 languages and about 179 or 180 dialects. It also broadcasts news, information, entertainment, and reaches out to the communities as such. In the ministry, we are looking at an expansion of this sector that we are celebrating here today, the community radio, the community broadcasting sector. We are committed to expand this sector. There are about 350 community radio stations that are already operational. We approved about 50 of them last week. They will be now processed to be operational, and almost as much or more than these are in the offing, in the sense they were approved, but they are being processed. And we also know that because we're all aware of the strengths of the community broadcasting as to how it reaches out to the community, how we address issues like public health. Community radios have played a massive role in keeping us together and in providing relevant information to the people across communities across the country. We like to acknowledge the role it has played in preventive health, in women's health, nutrition for women, nutrition for children, and empowerment of women, empowerment of youth by giving them a voice, in enhancing civic participation. We also have the Active Citizen Festival today, enhancing citizen participation in governance, and of course, taking ahead the goals of set by all countries put together under the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, the most important sectors of the media and entertainment sector, radio, music, advertising, these are all being addressed in this sector. We've come up with this concept of lead community radios, which are very keen that we should be working on together. And this for us, all of us, will be one of the takeaways of the festival here, for the 3-day festival that is being celebrated. We've tried to we are concerned that the number of community radio stations in the country are not increasing the way they should, because there is a requirement. We all know that there is a huge requirement of community broadcasting in the country. The country is huge, but the area that is served by a community radio station is much small, 5 to 10 kilometers. So therefore, the scope of enhancing this sector is massive. And therefore, we want this sector to really, really grow. So while on the one hand, there are regulatory and procedural issues, but on the other hand, there are issues of actually operating a community radio station. For that, we would like this setup that has been brought together by Ms. Archana Kapoor and UNESCO. We would like all of you to sit together and see and support this sector and see how to support each other. Because we want these lead community radio stations to handhold the community radio stations that are working in a certain area next to them. Sometimes when we are in the process of approving applications for community radio stations, we see that organizations or educational institutions, they have a lot of enthusiasm because the idea of broadcasting is very interesting. Idea of giving out your views or sharing information with the people, with the communities, strengthening communities. The idea is very nice, very romantic. But running a community radio station is not so easy. So we sometimes find a gap that the applicant is very enthusiastic, but the person doesn't know anything about what community involvement in broadcasting is about. Sitting in a studio broadcasting is one thing, but engaging with the community, having a system of feedback to and fro, and responding to the needs of the community is another ballgame. So this is where we found that a lead community station could play a role, where we have a radio station that has been working extremely well, who understands the nuances of community broadcasting, and that radio station handholds and supports the other community radio stations. So we feel that this lead CRS concept will really support many of us who want to run radio stations. And it's going to be a process of mutual learning. We hope that it becomes successful. We take step by step, we learn from each other, and we move on to the next steps. We would like you to come up with ideas on how to strengthen the community radio stations sector as such. And also, ideally, we've been requesting all the disaster-prone areas, the states and the districts, the coastal areas, the hilly areas, let's say certain affected areas where we all feel that the need of communication with the community is much stronger, and other broadcasting of private FM may not be necessarily available in tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, in rural areas. This is the broadcasting which is going to be effective. So we request you to come up with ideas to understand how the lead community radio station system works, to strengthen it, and also to give us ideas on how we can work on this sector more. We are looking for a lot of other experiments. We would be very happy to have state-wise groups of lead community radio stations, or even community radio stations as such who can group themselves for a particular state, because the way things are, they can be responded in a more focused manner if they are grouped in a particular way. So if you like to group yourself with certain states, whether you can group with the state governments or on your own to respond to the radio stations in that area in a particular state, we would be very, very happy, and we would like to support you further in that. We would also like to hear from from partners about experiences in other countries, because there are a lot of learnings that we are looking at. We would like you to deliberate and also give us your recommendations on how to increase revenues, how to make community broadcasting more effective, how to make it more, how to make it operational on a long-term basis, how to engage with communities. Because disaster, health, community requirements, these are all very specific to an area where these radio stations can focus upon. Another very interesting thing that the radio stations can do during this period, while we celebrate the 75 years of India's independence from British rule, are that we celebrate our local heroes. Local heroes not only during the freedom struggle, but also currently, over a period of time. This is a time to acknowledge and talk about our local heroes. So we look forward to your deliberations. We are also looking forward to some recommendations that we have sought from TRAI, the regulator of broadcasting. We want to ease out a few conditions, eligibility conditions in this sector so that we can have more eligible participants in this sector. We are looking forward to try to support us and relax the licensing conditions and eligibility conditions. We are looking forward to their recommendations soon, as we had sought from them. And we are looking at your recommendation how to enhance the number of radio stations. We should have been in thousands by now, but we are just struggling in between 300 and 400 for some time now. So really, please help us out. Let's help each other. Let's help the communities, and let's enhance our numbers. So whatever the issues are that are putting us down, that are not helping us grow, please give your suggestions. I would request Ms. Archana Kapoor to take your suggestions formally and give to the ministry so that we can work on them and support this sector in a much better way. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
I would like to thank all of you for your kind words, and also Mr. Shresht for mentioning the toolkit, which has been a pioneering work with the support from UNESCO and UNICEF.